Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. This is episode 60. We've entered our 6th decade.
Dang, we're good.
Yeah, we're old enough to go spend our mornings at Hardee's drinking coffee now.
We get a senior discount.
Yeah, dude, is it at 60 or do you have to be 65?
It's at 55.
Oh, is it?
So
man, I'm getting close to that. This is November 3rd, 2023. My name is Justin Young. I am joined, as always, by Alicia Utecht and Mario Sanders. OJ's feeling a little under the weather, so we wish him well. That feels better over the weekend and everything, and is back in bright and bushy tail on Monday. So how have things been going for the two of you?
You know, it's been a bit of a week. I was out of town last weekend with my sister, which was amazing. You know, I don't really see my family during the semester because it's a 12-hour drive home. And
you're from Wisconsin?
Minnesota.
Right? Minnesota, excuse me. They're the same place, basically.
No.
A return to somebody's going to get beat up in the parking lot after the episode.
It's like North and South Dakota. It's the same place, really.
Okay, the Dakotas I'll give you. But yeah, it's just too far and too expensive to fly and too far to the airport to go home during the semester. So, But meeting up with my sister in Chicago this last weekend was really nice.
Yeah, you went to the Sonic concert, right?
We did. We went to the Sonic Symphony concert, and so that was frankly incredible. Like, don't get me wrong, I love just going to concerts at all, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. Regardless of the quality of a Sonic game, you can always count on the music being top tier. And so getting to go to this concert was so awesome, and it was really fun, like, especially because my sister has been super fixated on Sonic for a while, whereas I'm like, you know, I like it, it's up there for me, I'll geek out about it with her, but getting there and having so many other people who are also fixated on it like she is was really cool.
I think it's interesting that you're describing somebody as more into Sonic than you.
Yeah, I may or may not have been thinking the same thing. Like, you mean you're just into it? What do you?
Yeah.
What do you consider fixated?
Y'all have heard me talk about Rufus Shinra, right?
Okay, fair point.
No, but so, yeah, and it was really cool because, like, getting out there, you know, before the concert, they're playing music just over the speakers, and it was hilarious. You know, at one point they played the drowning warning, and just the entire theater froze. And everyone was just like, oh no, we can't die. And then when they started the concert, you know, the symphony comes out there, the conductor comes out, and the conductor was just geeking out the whole time. Which was so fun. He was like, okay, you know, how many of you, you know, Frontiers was your first game? Okay, how many of you been playing for 5 years, 10 years, 15? How many of you started with the first game like I did?
That's cool.
And then, you know, he kept doing, every time that they finished something, he would do where, you know, he lifts his hands up to get the crowd going and then brings his hands back down to quiet down. And then brings his hands back up. And then just little kid grin. He's like, I've always wanted to do that.
Is this I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is this a traveling symphony, or are they
it's
just
a
sort of
world
using
tour.
Whatever the local symphony in the city that they're in?
I think it's traveling.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
It is for the world tour. So, and yeah, so he was awesome. And so the first half of the concert was all symphony. So, you know, they're doing medleys from different games over the years. I got a great laugh because they did, from the first Sonic Adventure game, they did Believe in Myself and It Doesn't Matter. And for everything, they had videos playing on the screen behind them. And in the video during that one of the things in Sonic Adventure, if you remember, there's an old man statue that you can pick up and carry around. And particularly, I've been rewatching the Runaway Guys LP of Sonic Adventure, and they have so much fun with the old man statue. It's absolutely ridiculous. But it's like, it's such a minor thing in the game. You use it to get a special Chow egg. But the video that they played during that part of the symphony had an old man statue cameo, and my sister and I just both died.
That's cool. I like that they had that going on in the background to
Probably to ground you, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
like, where is this music from?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for people who are, not as into Sonic, but there's also, just that gets the nostalgia, but
Well, it's
sure.
and it's really neat, like, so they have, Sonic, they did a Sonic CD medley, and so, they have really smooth transitions and gameplay between Sonic and Amy and Tails and all that. So it's neat seeing that. So they did the first half of the concert, that was Symphony, and then they took intermission, and then the second half, Crush 40 came out, Kellen Quinn came out.
That's sick as hell.
I know, right? So the entire second half was a rock concert.
You won over Mario.
I'll pop off for Crush 40.
Right?
Mario has gone to the dark side.
So I also have to ask then, did they play songs from the best Sonic soundtrack, Sonic R?
They did not, sadly.
Oh, well,
No Sonic R.
wow.
But but it was really great. They did, of course they did what I'm Made Of from Heroes, which was the one that my sister was really hoping would happen. So that was cool. They did from The Black Knight. They did from from Colors. They did Fist Bump. They did all kinds of stuff. And this was why, like, when I was texting before the concert, I was like, man, I wish I had money for floor seats, because I had seen in my YouTube recommended, like, Kellen Quinn and Crush 40, and I was like, oh no, I want to be on the floor for that. Because Kellen Quinn came through and was, like, running through the audience, as he's singing and doing the new songs from Frontiers.
This is
and
going to
then-
be a stupid question. That's not the Bowling for Soup guy, is it?
No, that's
Okay.
Sleeping with Sirens.
Oh, okay. Because I know, was it Bowling for Soup did Sonic
Fist Bump,
Unleashed?
I think. Yeah.
Maybe they did multiple songs, but
Yeah,
I'm
no,
pretty
I
sure
think
they had
no,
whatever
they did
keep.
Endless Possibilities. You're right, which they also did at the concert. But
So I gotta ask, what was the encores? Is the encore Escape from the City?
Encores was Escape from the City, and then one of the new songs, and then of course the final song of the night was Live and Learn.
Of course, has to be.
Yeah, like we all knew that was going to be the last one, but it was so funny because they come out and they do their thing, and oh my gosh, and Jun Sano, who's the guitarist, who's top tier Crush 40, everything is Jun Sano and Johnny Gioli. And he was like, yeah, so, I try to, like, keep up with fans on Twitter and interact with fans where I can. And, this is October 25th. It's spooky season. So we're going to do Pumpkin Hill from Sonic Adventure 2. Which is, all the songs from the Knuckles levels in those games are hilariously dorky. You can't even call it rap. It's just speaking over the music. But the fact that they did Pumpkin Hill just killed everyone. We all died.
That's cool. That's cool that they seemingly had a lot of fun with it as well then.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And during Fist Bump, they're all up front, fist bumping everybody in the front row. And like I said, Kellen Quinn went out into the audience and was having fun. And then they got to the quote unquote end of the show. And then they literally said, they're like, yeah, we're supposed to go off stage right now for the encore for you, but we're having too much fun. We're not going to go off stage. We're just going to go into the encore.
I think that's really interesting that we're at a point in the history of video games where the music can be this like concert event, right? And it's not just the symphonic music, it's not just the like lyrical sort of rock music and everything, that there's this melding of the two, and that there's enough interest in this for this to be a touring show around the world, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like it's just Sonic is an anomaly and this isn't happening with other video game music, because it is.
Well, the Stardew Valley one's coming. We talked about going to that in
That's
St. Louis.
St. Louis. years ago, I went to a Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
one.
Distant Worlds has been going forever.
Video Games Live has been a touring show for years. It's just a weird sort of mutation of the like fandom around video games, like because this happens with movies, right? Like, but you'll see this with a local symphony, right?
Yeah.
The local symphony in town will be like, we're going to do all the big movie hits, and we're going to do the Jurassic Park theme and Star Wars. And,
Or they'll do like, oh, we're gonna show the movie on screen and play the music live for a whole movie.
yeah, something like that. And you're like, okay, well, that makes sense and everything. But the fact that video games have kind of reached that level now, and that the music is of a quality, that people feel like it's worth going to a concert to see it, right? Because there was a time when video game music would not have been thought of that level, that quality. And that's just a cool evolution of the sort of fandom around video games and the sort of cultural impact that they have and everything.
Yeah, it is really incredible, and like especially, I think I've said this to you guys before, but like with how much video game music I listen to, just like when I'm doing homework or whatever, just like getting to see how great it is, and like being able to, trying to explain to Julie, who finished her work here, now she's doing her PhD, but she was like, what? There's songs with lyrics from Sonic the Hedgehog? And so I sent her Live and Learn, and I was like, tell me this didn't belong on the radio in the early 2000s. And she's like, okay, yeah, I get it. But like being able to be like, that's one example. Look at how many examples. We made a 2-hour concert out of this.
Right.
For one franchise. And like I'm still a little bummed because during intermission they were playing music from other series as well. So like they played some Ace Attorney music, they played a couple of songs from Undertale, and I was like, guys, it's a symphony concert. Why are we not playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night? But it was so much fun, and it was so good to spend time with my sister.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing to examine that and see the growth of music from video games and how that's gone mainstream. And I still remember as a kid being, really obsessed with the soundtrack from particular games. And at that time, it wasn't even getting released here in the States.
Right.
Like in
You're
Japan.
like recording it on your cassette player.
Yeah, like in Japan, it was getting released as albums, but in the U.S., you could import those, but then it was costing you an arm and a leg. And to now see that it's gone from, okay, now every soundtrack gets released just about, right? At least digitally. And, it's on streaming platforms and all that, to now we're having symphonic concerts and everything for this. It sort of just makes you wonder, like, where is video game music 10, 15, 20 years from now?
Yeah.
I mean, we already have people like Trent Reznor, like, composing the soundtracks for this. So, there was a time, to date myself, like, I remember a time when the soundtrack for a movie was a big deal. And, like, you'd go out and buy the soundtrack to a movie because sometimes the music was a bigger deal than the movie itself. And I wonder if we get to a point where for bands writing original music for a new big video game, or, contributing a song, an unreleased song to a new video game that's coming out, if that becomes a thing just as pure marketing, because obviously Guitar Hero became such a potent tool for bands to market their music to a new generation.
Yeah.
But, like, one of the things is rock and roll music has kind of died. There's not a lot of what we'd call traditional rock bands on the radio today, but there's a lot of that kind of music in video games. And so if I was like an up and coming rock band, I feel like I'd be going to Sony and saying, hey, for the next Spider-Man or the next God of War, can I contribute an original track to this?
Yeah.
because that seems like a way to just publicize yourself. And here we have the house band that's recording music for the Sonic games that has become like a fairly big cult following, from their music. And you think if that band was just playing on the radio, they would probably be fairly forgettable. But it's because their music is linked to this beloved franchise that they have developed this cult following, and they can go sell out shows in Chicago, right? Like they're not selling out like the Varsity Theater. They're selling out
few
big
more
cities.
seats in that in the Auditorium Theater in Chicago.
Yeah,
just a couple.
So that's cool. It seems like a potent opportunity there. All right, cool. Mario, anything interesting going on with you?
Not really. It was a busy week just with like having work, school stuff, papers and all that. So not a ton going on this side.
So I've got an interesting kind of rant. I think it's an interesting rant. And this is about registration for classes.
Oh, yeah, that's open now, isn't it?
Yeah, so I find it really bizarre. This is the only school I have ever been at where registration opens up and nobody registers. And then like a month later, my classes will be full because people actually register. And
What?
everywhere else I've ever been, like the moment classes open, people are like lined up waiting to register.
Say, I remember being an undergrad waking up. I remember my roommate waking up at 7:50 to register for classes at 8 a.m. and going back to bed.
Yeah. No, I mean, I tell the story like when I was first registering, you didn't have online registration, so you had to do it on the phone.
Oh, I bet those phone lines were full.
Yes, and so you'd call the number, like they would open up at like 6 a.m. or something. So at 5:50, you're up. You call the number.
Lucky caller number 7, you get to register.
Right. It was exactly that. They could have had a hit radio show with it. And then you would just hit redial over and over again, hang up, redial. And, like to get into some classes, you had to do that. Once you got hiring your major, it didn't matter as much because those classes generally weren't filling. But like, particularly if you wanted a specific professor at a specific time or a sort of general, university elective course. And here that just doesn't happen for the most part. And it's kind of weird.
That is so weird.
Because even at the last university I was at, like, 2 days into registration, if I had a class that was going to be popular, that class was filled.
Yeah.
And here it can be like a month or two for that class to fill.
You're teaching the pop culture class in spring, right?
Right.
Like I would think that would be one that's like,
No. I'm teaching an online speech class that filled day one. And that's fine. Like, it's not me ranting about my class. It's not.
Oh, no, that's just examples.
Yeah. It's just like, this has been my entire time here. It doesn't matter what class it is. And it's kind of weird. So I have at least one class I know students have to take, like it's required as part of the major. And it's like 4 people in there right now. And I'm like, that class is going to be like at least like 13, 15 people by the time registration's done.
Yeah.
And like those, 10 or 11 people have just not apparently registered yet.
Do you think it potentially, and I mean, maybe this is just, I don't know if it's like school wide. Do you think that maybe has to do with just, this isn't the biggest department on campus? Classes, not that classes don't like fill. I mean, obviously 101, everybody has to take that. But if you're in comm, I don't know how many majors the comm department has. But if it's one of those things where it's like, it's not like I need to fight for my spot, it's going to overfill or anything like that. If I just don't know if that's part of it, or if you were to go to anthropology, if those faculty experience the same thing.
Can confirm that anthropology does not have enough people that everything's going to fill.
Fair enough. All right, fine. Business or psychology or something like that.
Education. I get the point you were trying to make.
I literally just had this conversation with Juno like an hour ago, which Juno, for those listening, did an undergrad double major in comm and anthropology, so that's why it was just a funny example in the moment.
Yeah, so that's not surprising. Anthropology doesn't. There's not a mad dash for those classes, though there should be. Like
There should be. They're cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right? That it's just not a fear this class is going to fill, at least for most classes.
Yeah, because I know my undergrad, the comm class, like my second semester, the performance studies class that I took it because I liked the professor. But like day one, he had us all get up and be like, oh, what's your name? What year are you? Like, why are you in this class? And I think 95% of the people were like, I'm in this class because everything else was full.
Right. Yeah. That sort of thing, tends to happen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was a 300 level class, so that was majors.
Yeah, I think, and it was the same thing for me. I did my undergrad in sociology, but I felt the same way of like, okay, this is my registration date. This is my registration time. I got to sign up whenever I can because not because like there were probably a ton of us, but more just there weren't as many offerings. So it's like,
Yeah.
these are the classes I want. I will fall back onto these other ones if I, need to. I would be happy to take those ones as well, but it's more of a preference versus, all right, here, I'm here now.
Yeah, and I'm just speaking, from experience, my
Sure.
own personal experience, and I'm teaching undergraduate courses, so it's a little different than graduate courses. I
Yeah.
understand graduates like just wait around and don't register half the time.
I'll say I can't register yet because I still need to pay student fees.
Yeah, so like, and that may be the issue, right? Students have Bursar bills still to pay, and so they can't register for whatever reason.
But it is weird that like SIU is the one place.
It does feel significantly different here. Having been at like 4 other universities, it feels significantly different here than other universities. So that's the only reason I bring it up, and I don't know what that says about anything.
Yeah, and I mean, it might just be not even just like, it might just be a cultural shift in university as well. I mean, you've been here since pre-COVID, right?
Right.
If that just sort of lent to a shift in running to sort of like that registration. I don't know if other schools now are kind of experiencing the same thing. I could certainly understand like Bursar bills also just being part of it.
Yeah, it might be a generational shift there. It might be that the students coming up have a very different outlook. But yeah, when I was an undergrad, you were sitting by that phone waiting to register for those classes. Because if you didn't get in, for the most part, professors weren't going to sign you in.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that is really interesting.
all right. So enough with the off topic. Let's talk about some video games. Alicia, what have you been playing?
So I haven't played a ton because I did spend my entire weekend just hanging out with my sister, and so now this week I've been spending my entire time doing homework.
Right.
But I did, before I went to Chicago, I was like, I should beat the Sonic Frontiers DLC because they're going to play songs from it. I did not beat the Sonic Frontiers DLC. When it first came out, and I didn't get to play it right away, but I was seeing articles about like people saying how they stepped up the difficulty. Wow, they stepped up the difficulty. And I'm like, I play on easy mode for a reason. I don't have the brain power or the time to be phenomenal at this game. And on easy mode, it's too hard at some points. Like I had to look up on Reddit how to. So the way that it is in the DLC now, you're doing tower trials. So you have to do all the platforming to get up to the top of the tower, and then you have a challenge. And the first one is, it cuts all your buffs that you've got through the whole game, and you have to beat so many enemies within 2 minutes. And I was like, how the heck do I do this? I had to Reddit it to figure out, because everything I was doing, I kept dying.
And you're playing as one of the side characters, right?
No, this is as Sonic.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you do stuff as Tails and Amy and Knuckles, and then you're Sonic to do the platforming and the challenge.
I see.
And so I finally beat the first tower and got back down, found the second tower, and now I can't get past the platforming on that because everything, there's so many springs that bounce you backwards. And I'm just like, I have not sat down with this game in long enough to have down, the jump and boost to get to where you need to go.
I think you need to be kind in yourself and just know that 3D platforming in a Sonic game is like not a great experience.
I mean, it wouldn't be so bad if they didn't have the backwards springs, which I can even understand having the backwards springs on like expert mode or on hard mode. But I'm like, I am playing on easy mode. Let it be easy, please.
Yeah, you'd think they would have. Do they have like checkpoints on the towers? Because I know on
they don't. They did in the
regular
main game.
They had the checkpoints where it's like, okay, you've reached this platform. There's now whatever the little sort of
the little autosave
pole thing that you can. If you fall to the bottom, you can just go to the top. But
yeah, no, they don't in the DLC, which is a choice.
I think it's interesting too as a design choice that, hey, we're making DLC. How do we position this DLC? Is it just more of the game, or is it going to be a new challenge beyond? Because most games ratchet up the challenge right to the end, right?
Yeah.
So if you're going to add an extra level as DLC, is that going to be another step up in challenge? And I think some games approach it that way, whereas other games are like, no, this is just additional story content, right?
Well, and when the mainline game came out, there was a lot of talk about like, oh, it's too easy even on the hard modes. And so it definitely is Sega responding to that. I just wish that easy mode would still be easy.
Right.
I've pretty much accepted at this point. I'm like I said, maybe Thanksgiving break I can sit down and play and get to the point where like again I can do the boost and get to where I'm supposed to be instead of overshooting or angling off the wrong direction. But right now I'm like, I don't have the time and the brain power.
Are you playing on the Switch?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how they ramp up the difficulty in like the different difficulties? Like, is it more enemies? Do they do more damage? Do you have less health? I don't know if you know the answer to that or not.
I want to say there's more enemies and that they ramp up the, they do more damage and that you still can get all your buffs, but, and I could be wrong on this. I know my sister played it on expert. And she played the PS5 version.
Had she played the DLC?
Yeah, she's beaten the DLC. She did have to go down to normal rather than expert on the final boss, she said. Or not on the final boss. I think she said on one of the tower challenges. But then she went back to expert for the rest of it.
So this is like quite challenging.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she beat it on the main game on hard mode, and she's having to lower the difficulty as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay.
And like God bless her, she was like, well, I can try and help you if you want. And I'm like, you've never played the Switch version. And she's like, well, yeah, but I can learn. And there's part of me that wishes I would have let her because she probably would have made it, honestly.
Then it does sound like that might have been their approach of, we're going to just ramp it up. We're going to make this particularly like a difficult challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
Which again, I can respect that.
Yeah.
I just, it's literally, it annoys me because I'm on easy mode.
It was free, right?
It was free.
I think if that's your approach to DLC, I think it should probably be free.
Yeah.
I think it would be a hard sell.
Right.
To like, we're going to, this DLC costs $15. Unless you like explicitly say, and this is meant to be like a step up in a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, this is a very sort of Nintendo approach, right? Which is what Nintendo's been doing for the last few Mario games, is that the Mario games themselves are actually pretty easy to get through. And then once you beat them, it opens up like more challenging levels.
Yeah.
And I know that's frustrated some people with the games and everything, but actually I kind of get it. Like you want more people to be able to play your games, but like you want there still to be that challenge. So just
Well, and I've definitely seen pushback like, this was free, it's super hard. you go over to Pokemon Gen 9, that DLC costs $35, and it's like a joke in terms of difficulty and actually new Pokemon. Great for story, a joke for the fact that we paid $35.
Right.
Do you know how, if somebody were to just like be able to get through it without too much challenge or without failing, you know, how long do you think the DLC is?
Oh, I think...
Or like, I guess maybe a better question is like, how long did it take your sister, if you know?
I don't know. I want to say I was looking at the FC playthroughs video. I think DLC for them was like 2 hours.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But I know that their video is also like 16 hours long, so not sure how much of that is. I want to say that they hit the 100% on mainline game before hitting.
And I think of the fact that it's free, I don't think that that's as big of a deal. I mean, I know we had talked about it for Pokemon that you said it was about 4 hours, and that's expensive for 4 hours.
Okay, I lied.
gameplay.
DLC is 4 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, for the Sound Memory DLC and is about an hour, and then the Final Horizon DLC is like 3.5, 4 hours.
So 4 hours of free content's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My sole problem is that easy mode is not easy. I still think I love that they did. We're gonna offshoot from before the final boss instead of like trying to be like, oh, how do you beat the boss, but actually you didn't.
Right.
Like, I still love the approach that they took. I still love getting to play as Amy and Knuckles and Tails. I just want easy mode to be easy.
Right. All right. Is that it?
Yeah, that's been it. Nice. Busy week trying to catch up from taking the weekend off.
Sure. Mario, how about you? What have you been playing?
Honestly, same. Really not that much with how busy of a week it was. The one thing I really did was, I want to say it was Saturday, this past Saturday. A friend wanted to do all 10 Jackbox party packs like in a row. So like all 50 games. And I joined maybe when they got to like party pack 6. It took them like 15 hours.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I never think of those games as being that long, but those games are longer. Like they started around noon. I want to say I joined maybe around like 9 or 10 p.m. And I think I went to bed at like 3 in the morning, and I didn't even get through the end. They still had like a pack and a half to go.
Dang.
I mean, if you play TKO games take a really long time, like longer than you think they should.
And I think that was like what was so eye-opening about this, because, we'll do it, we're just sort of hanging out in Discord and like, oh, do you want to, we'll just send out a big ping of like anybody interested in playing whatever game. And I guess I don't really think about it then, but like when there was this like concerted effort of like, we're going to go through all of them, to then realize like how long it was, because then it got to the point where like some of them had been playing all day when I first joined. And so, it got to the point
Dang.
of like, holy moly, like this game is, how long is this individual game going to take? And so, but it was fun. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of the Jackbox games, but I think that they have a good place. I think my problem with a lot of those kinds of games is they foster or encourage like a very like inside jokes
Yeah.
sort of approach to playing the games. Or like if you have to create content in them or create
flashbacks.
jokes, it's a lot of it just ends up being like, yeah, just insider sort of knowledge. And so if you're playing with people you don't know,
self-referential.
if you're playing with people you don't know as well, I think some of those games, a lot of those games can fall flat. So like, in my opinion, and honestly, it's not opinion. This is objective fact. The best Jackbox game is Pull Mine, because you can play that game with anybody and it's going to be a great time. Pull Mine is basically, it gives you a prompt of like and 8 options, and you have to rank the options. And so then it takes all of those rankings from everybody, and then you have to guess what was the number 1 answer, what was the number 3 answer, and what or the
It's Family Feud, basically.
sort of, yeah, essentially. And so then the final round is always great because everybody ranks. You're given 8 options, and you have to rank the top 5 for just you. And then when it comes to like the actual round, you have to essentially go in reverse order. So what was the least popular? What was 7th? What was 6th? What was 5th? And those ones are always so good because you realize the wild opinions that your friends have. And so, and that's just like I could play that game. I could play Pull Mine for 15 hours straight because that game is just so much fun.
Yeah, I feel like, so a couple of years ago, some friends of mine from high school and I went on a trip up in Eastern Kentucky in a state park and everything, and we got a cabin and we played Jackbox. And so we hooked up a laptop and played that and a couple other different games. But anyways, yeah, like what you're talking about, the inside jokes, right?
Yeah.
Like, here is somebody makes a joke about somebody we went to high school with 20 years ago, and then it's just riffing off of that, right?
Or like when we did it at Playing for Pets and everything was update controller.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, at least that happened at Playing for Pets.
Yeah.
But like,
sorry.
the issue was, anybody who would have come into that would have been completely lost and would have felt completely like outside of it.
Yeah.
When I do play it with students sometimes in a class, it seems to work better because there's less of that,
Sure.
right? And so it's kind of a weird thing. You either have to be a group of very good friends playing it, or you have to be almost complete strangers playing it together. A mix does not work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, like this is I'm pretty tight with most of the people that was playing that, but they had been playing for however many hours, so they were then referencing just like stuff that happened in the earlier games, and I'm like, I haven't been following since the very beginning.
That's
so.
what Alicia's talking about with
exactly.
Playing for Pets. Like we were referencing something that
It was like
happened.
3 games earlier.
Right.
And I did it as well, when we
Oh, yeah.
there's like a wrestling one where you like create your fighter, and like literally that's exactly what I did. Was I referenced something that had happened in like the previous game. But yeah, and so I think that like I said, I think the Jackbox games are fun, but they end up turning into that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
They're fun with the right people.
Yeah,
The right situation.
the people playing, I think, makes or breaks the experience of that game, which I guess is basically any game. But
Well, and I think you're right that different one of those games, like it's weird to talk about the Jackbox games as a collective because each party pack, there's 10 party packs and each one of those is 5 games. And so like within that, there might be one game that works better
Yeah.
than these 2 or 3 other games, depending on the sort of group of people that you have or, just the setup for it. So yeah, those are amazing games, I think, because they allow anyone to play.
Yeah.
Like, as we're coming up on Thanksgiving and Christmas and, people being home for the holidays and around family, I've gotten the Jackbox games out at Christmas when it's not just my immediate family, but it's like a family friend is coming over that night. And it's just like everybody can kind of join in. And even the people who aren't playing directly, there's the audience feature, but then it's just a fun thing to be in the room, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody's kind of laughing and everybody
You just chime in and
yeah,
everybody feels like they can play, versus say something like Mario Kart that is very accessible, but let's be honest, if you're playing you're playing the rest of your family in Mario Kart, can they really keep up?
sure. And I think about. And that's what I was just thinking about. It was like, I'm going home for winter break. I would buy the one with pole mine. And like I would boot that up and like, oh, play it with like me, my mom and stepdad, my step siblings and their partners. And like, so there would be 7 of us. And even like my stepdad's mom, like that's a game that, but like half of them, if it was Mario Kart or even Mario Party, a lot of those games that we think of as being very accessible are not, for a lot of people. I mean, would they be able to play it? Sure.
Would it take more time? Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, it was fun. If you have Jackbox 7, play Pole Mine. It's a good time.
I think I have them all except 10. So.
Yeah, that's the one that just came out, I think, right?
Yeah, I need to get 10 at some point. It looks good from what I've seen of it. Rift Tracks is also a lot of fun if you've played that.
I have not. I know I've heard you mention it in past episodes, though.
Yeah, that game's really a whole lot of fun. We actually have a video of that up on the website because Sandy and Janine, isn't it?
Yep,
are playing with us.
Sandy and Janine and our then normal crew. So you, OJ, me, Ryan.
Yeah. We should get together and do something like that again.
We should.
That's a lot of fun, and that's a good experience. Maybe we could do that.
Jackbox 7.
Or Jackbox 10 is a new one.
If you're playing Pole Mine, call me. I'm in. I'm always in for Pole Mine.
Well, that's good to know.
But that's basically all I've really played.
Okay. Let's see. So I tried something new this week. I played a game called Gal Guardian's Demon Purge.
That's just an epic title.
This sounds like an anime game, Justin.
It
Is this an
does.
anime game?
It is an anime-ass anime game. So this game, like, I feel like I should have looked up the history of this game. The title of this game has been played around with. Like, they changed the title, or they were talking about changing it at one point. I feel like when this game was first announced and first shown, they put out a trailer that was, so this is a game where you play as anime girls in anime girl outfits. So the little Japanese schoolgirl outfits.
I say specifically magical girls, I'm guessing.
Yeah. They go to a magical academy. And when they first showed this, I'm 99.9% sure this is the right game. When they first showed off this game, the like little cutscenes and everything, and the little like static images when they talk and everything, had, let's say, some risque images of these young girls.
No.
Yeah.
What? From magical girl anime?
Right. And so it was very much, so for those who don't know what we're talking about, it's the sort of thing where they look quite busty, and we're going to show that off and accentuate that with dressing them in bustiers and that kind of stuff.
In uniforms that U.S. middle school and high school would never allow because it doesn't fit the dress code.
You would be sent home or have to wear the secretary's sweatshirt the rest of the day. Cardigan, I guess, is maybe more appropriate. But yeah, anyway, so, that was the hype on this game, and it really turned a lot of people off because a lot of people were like, oh no, this is one of those games I'm going to feel dirty playing. Like, and this is not why I'm interested in this game. And I don't want anybody to like look on my Steam page and see I played this game. So they worked on it and did some work and everything. And so then everything I saw that came out after that was extremely toned down. And much more doesn't look like it's going to turn into hentai. And looks like it's going to be much more like this is just a game with anime characters in it. So what I've played so far has been that. This is a game with anime characters in it. It is very anime. It is, the setup, the storyline. It is a one female student getting revenge on 2 sisters that she's mad at for reasons I'm not quite sure of yet. And she takes their magical academy and merges it with the demon dimension, and that makes the school turn into Castlevania.
Nice.
Like literally the opening of this game is them getting sucked into a portal, and then they run up to the front of the school and the camera pans up and there's a moon behind the school and there's bats flying around it, and they go, this doesn't look like our school. And I'm like, no, because this is a copyright infringement.
And so is that the style of game it is? Is it like a Metroidvania?
Well, so it very much wants you to think it's a Metroidvania.
Okay.
Is it a Metroidvania or a dating sim?
That's so that's what I was saying.
No dating elements yet.
Yet.
Though-
Yet is the key word
Yeah.
of that sentence, everybody.
I fully expect at some point I'm going to come across a gargoyle and they're going to be like, I'm so lonely. Well, I'll go on a date with you. Hooray. And then I'll just get text options and it becomes a visual novel at that point.
Yep.
That hasn't happened yet. But like when you start playing this is, hey, remember Symphony of the Night? We sure do. And it very much feels like that. The thing that's weird about it is it actually is broken up into stages. But the stages are very large and they feel open. So I think you can go back later when you get additional abilities, because there was stuff in the first stage that I could not do or I could not access. So I think you can go back later. And when you go from one stage to the next, you do go through an area where it's like, do you want to go back to the beginning of this other area? And so it's like a weird structure because it's sort of stage based, but it feels much more like you can go back. It feels
It's like a combo between old style and more new style Castlevania in some ways, maybe.
Yeah, it feels very much like it feels like an 8-bit proto Metroidvania. Like when you go back and you play something like Blaster Master or something that feels like, oh, this is getting to what we think of today as a Metroidvania. And that's the way this game almost feels in its structure so far, what I've played and everything, I'll say.
Just waiting for the visual novel turn.
The thing that's, I guess, sort of unique about this is you control the two sisters. You can play it as 2 players, so I guess 2 players simultaneous. But you are playing as these 2 sisters. You can switch between them at any time. One of them has kind of a standard melee attack. The other one has a machine gun.
Of course.
I love that so much.
And so it's kind of interesting because you are switching back and forth, because when you're up close, you do this melee attack. It seems to deal more damage. But if you're attacking an enemy from a distance, you can use this machine gun. Then you can do combo attacks. The other thing is the sisters have different abilities. The way they describe these abilities is really humorous. So one of the things they note is, oh, this sister is shorter than the other one. So when she kneels down, she can actually walk while she's kneeling. So she can go through smaller, like little open areas than the other sister. And you're like, that's not how that works. Like she's not like
that. I appreciate the creativity. That's like the poison for Cusco, the poison specifically made to kill Cusco's poison level creativity.
It's like, she's not 3 feet shorter than her. What are you getting at, game? So like the mechanically, it's been fine so far. It feels like a decent one of these games. I'm not super excited with it so far, right? Like a really good Metroidvania, I kind of get excited when I'm playing. Like I just want to play this. I want to keep playing this. This hasn't had that hook for me so far. I'm going to play some more of it and see, because I've heard some very positive things about it. So I feel like maybe you get to that point, but so far I'm not super hooked on it. And I think maybe part of that is also like the anime aesthetic does nothing for me. Like, the story, the dialogue is like very poorly written. It feels like television anime, versus like film where like
It
usually
feels like 4Kids dub of anime where Brock made jelly donuts instead of onigiri.
Yeah, it feels something like that, right? Like where it's very sort of like just almost labored dialogue, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, like this is fine, but who cares about this? Like maybe if I was like 10, I would be really into this, but and I'm probably being too harsh with that, but like it's not connecting with me.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't imagine the dialogue connecting with most people. So yeah, that's the new thing I tried. I'm still playing Super Mario Wonder. I've progressed most of the way through that game. I'm not going to talk a lot about it because I have the past 2 podcasts. I'll just continue to say that's a fantastic game. They've really done something unique and new and special with that game, and bless Nintendo, like to make that Zelda and that Mario game and Pikmin 4, and like what a banger of a year, 6 years, 7 years, whatever we are into the lifespan of the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, that does it for what we've been playing. Let's move on to news. This is a weird story. So this is already, Mario, I think you called this out before we even started, that Capcom claims to have an unannounced game that will sell millions by March 2024. So that's
It's going to sell millions by March of 2024. I thought that was when it was going to come out.
No, I'm sorry. It's gonna come. We don't know what the title is, but it's gonna come out. They're gonna start advertising it, and it's gonna come out, and it's gonna sell millions
by March of next year.
This feels like a My Girlfriend from Canada type of you don't know. You don't know her.
We've got an amazing game. You guys haven't heard of it, but it's amazing, and people are going to buy it in the millions. No, I can't show you a picture of it. It's under embargo. We've got a Canadian team working on it.
I did call it out before the show, but I missed the
you saved that My Girlfriend from Canada line for the show, though, and I'm so glad you did.
That sounds like a line from Ubisoft.
I said I'm calling it Mega Man Star Force. They've been listening to our podcast. They're counting on Ryan buying millions of copies.
Yeah, so I mean, the thing is, March is probably the end of their fiscal year. A lot of video game companies have March as the end of their fiscal year. So that's probably why they're saying this. To make a statement like this, though, tying into the end of their fiscal year, could get them in trouble with regulation authorities. Like you can't come out and say, we have this amazing game that we think is going to sell millions, to like try to pump up your stock before the end of the fiscal year.
Sure.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
So they must have something that they think they are going to release soon-ish. By, one would assume by January at the latest, if they think they're going to sell millions.
Yeah.
Did they say, did they give a timeline for it's unannounced right now, but we'll announce it in
No, they have not said anything more than this that I'm aware of.
Capcom.
Well, we talked about it a little again before the show. Like, what franchises could that even be? Because I guess the 3 that immediately come to mind would be Mega Man, Resident Evil, or Monster Hunter. But like Resident Evil just had 4, and Village isn't that old either.
Right.
Yeah.
Like Monster Hunter had a fairly recent Rise was last year, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it can't be a whole new Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a remake, if anything.
Yeah. I mean, I get they did put out the 3 remake pretty shortly after 2. I mean,
right.
Maybe it's hard to imagine they'd already be done with 5 unless it's something else, but
well, I mean, there's Code Veronica,
sure.
There's some other things like that, but yeah, I mean,
when I think Capcom, I think Mega Man and Resident Evil. So for it to be an unannounced game that they think will sell millions, I feel like it's got to be one of their big, safe franchises.
What is the fight? They're not Street Fighter, are
Yeah,
they?
they are, but they put that
I know
out.
they just put
It's
that
six,
out. So
yeah,
because I was thinking it was like, they had like the Marvel versus Capcom games back in the day.
Sure.
yeah,
And they have dark stalkers and stuff like that. But like all of those things is really difficult to imagine if they announced it today, them releasing by January or February,
yeah.
right? Like you wouldn't just like stealth drop a new Darkstalkers game.
Not if you expect it to sell millions.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one that you would, if it's a game that you anticipate being that big, I would imagine you're like building hype for it for a while.
And I mean, if it's a new Mega Man game, right? Like, I don't think Mega Man 11 actually sold
You know what it could be.
super well.
You know what it could
I don't
be.
think that sold, 5 million copies. It might have sold 1 million copies, but I don't get that as being a 5-7 million, game.
It could be a new Mega Man X, though. Mega Man X left off on a cliffhanger and hasn't had a new game in 15 years.
I mean, it could be. I mean, it could be
That
anything.
just occurred to me.
Yeah, but again, I
But
mean,
it's still
it
weird.
still feels like a very bold claim, even
Yeah.
for a Mega Man X game.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Mega-
I wouldn't be making that claim for a Mega Man X game.
My understanding is the reason we are not getting more Mega Man than we are is because those games have not been selling particularly well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's some new IP that they just really believe in, but that also
That would
feels
be-
hard to believe to make a claim like that.
Yeah. That's a bold claim no matter what kind of game it is. To be like, yeah, within 4 months, this game that we haven't given you a title, we haven't given you a preview, it might come out February.
Maybe
and we think it'll-
Capcom's coming out with a new Pokemon game. Maybe they partnered.
Well, I mean,
That would sell millions by March.
I
They
would
famously did.
absolutely play a Pokemon Mega Man crossover.
they famously did make multiple Zelda games. So
Oh, did they do the Oracle games? Is that
they did the Age. the
Oracle
Age-
Seasons and Ages?
Yeah, and then they did Mimish Cap, I think is some.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that wasn't it?
So, like not that I think they're working on a stealth Zelda game, because I don't see Nintendo as particularly needing them as an outside developer for Zelda right now. And they've already put out a Zelda game this year, so I don't know. It's fun to think about. It's fun to speculate about. It's probably going to be a lot less interesting than any of us would want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the kind of thing that if they didn't do this, then like they would announce whatever game it is, and we would all be like, "Oh, that's fine."
Yeah.
And like now because they did this, we're all gonna be like it's a good marketing technique, except for the fact that they said March 2024, and like you said, that could get into some iffy legal ground on stock.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the Game Awards coming up. That would be a place you could announce a big game like this. And if it is something big, I just keep going back to I don't know what would be this big.
Yeah.
I mean, even something like a new Monster Hunter game can sell millions just because it's Monster Hunter. It just doesn't feel like it would be a,
Yeah. My thought
A
on
big
an X
thing.
game, on a Mega Man X game rather than mainline, because like you said, the 11 didn't sell phenomenally, but X, they might be able to hype X on the fact that it has been so long and it ended on a cliffhanger, so people have been waiting on that cliffhanger for years, but
Right.
it's still.
But if it is something like X feels like the sort of game that traditionally a new Mega Man X game you would announce and have like a year lead time before it comes out.
Yeah, 4 months is really fast.
Well, and I mean, that's 4 months from today, right?
Yeah.
Like if they announce that at the Game Awards, that's the end of the month,
Yeah,
beginning of
so that's
December.
Yeah, early December.
It'd have to be like, hey, this we're announcing this game that's dropping next week.
Right. Well, or in
Like-
January or beginning of February, right? Like, so then it feels like that's a very different marketing approach than games have typically taken. Now, more games are doing that, but usually if it's a game that you expect to sell millions, you don't do a stealth drop
Yeah.
like like this feels like they're almost doing.
Yeah, and I mean, and I guess I feel like that's what would make me think it would be like a remake more than something brand new.
Right.
You know, because, the one that did it that, I mean, I don't know if it sold millions. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, would be like the Metroid Prime remake.
Right.
Yeah.
That came out that day that it was announced. And so, again, I don't know how it sold. I imagine well, but that's a new game just feels like, yeah, you would build some amount of hype for it beforehand.
Yeah.
Well, we shall see. We're not that far off from March 2024, so I guess we'll know by the end of March. Let's see. Starting November 12th, Microsoft will no longer allow unauthorized third-party accessories to be used with the Xbox console. According to sources, Microsoft plans to expand its program for approved third-party wireless Xbox controllers. So basically, people have been plugging in third-party controllers into their Xbox or wirelessly syncing them, I should say, and they've started to get some messages that are like, hey, this isn't an officially supported Xbox accessory. And apparently, starting November 12th, some of those unsupported ones, if they don't work out a deal with Microsoft to get official support, are just going to stop working. So if you have that little brother controller that you bought like cheap and it looks awkward and doesn't feel comfortable that you bought for your Xbox, that thing may not work after November 12th anymore.
I do wonder about this, like how that'll be handled if people have additional materials for accessibility. Like I would hope that there would be a plan around that, but it's definitely something I wonder seeing this.
So they released that adaptive controller, and my understanding is that there's a standardized port for plugging in accessories into that to work with that. And it's apparently like an audio jack port, and that's like standardized across like accessibility devices. And so I wonder if you have to have the standard Xbox adaptive controller, but as long as they're plugged in through that, if that sort of stuff would work, because you would have that base controller.
That would make sense.
But I don't know. That's a good issue to bring up, though, because they have pushed accessibility, and if this made some of those accessibility tools stop working, that would be that would
be a very bad thing.
It'd be a pretty bad PR hit after they hyped that so much.
Yeah.
So I mean, Microsoft has been pushing very much, hey, we are gamer friendly in a way that Microsoft or Sony is not, and things like this sort of kind of bring everybody, I think, back down to to reality that, hey, it's still Microsoft.
They're still a corporation.
Yeah, they're still like focused on how do we make the most money, and how we do that is by blocking, unofficial accessories. Let's see. This is a tragic story, or it feels like the beginning to a tragic story. Digital Eclipse has become part of Atari. So Digital Eclipse is the team that has been making all the best compilations in recent years. So they did the Making of Karateka this year. They did Atari 50. They did the Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection. If you have bought a collection of old video games in recent years and it was expertly put together with additional information, there's a very good chance that Digital Eclipse did it. They were building their name as, sort of the Making of Karateka as part of their Go Disc series that was supposed to be the beginning of a sort of Criterion collection. They have said publicly that they are working on the next one, that they will announce what the next game in that series is. They said in response to this that they're going to continue to work with outside developers, so they're not just going to be focused on Atari titles. But,
it definitely feels, like you said, it feels like the beginning of the end on that.
Well, and there's a story later we're going to talk about that makes that feel even more like a potentiality. But Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is I don't trust Atari in its current state because I do not know what that Atari is. They've been buying up a bunch of old properties. So they bought up Accolade. They own Bubsy the Bobcat now, which is like a curse. It feels like, The Ring, like you've watched the video, you own Bubsy. You're now cursed. You have to pass it on to someone else. So
it's like one of those email chains you would get.
Exactly.
If you don't forward it to 10 people, then somebody's gonna, kill your parents or
somebody has forwarded you Bubsy. You must forward him to 7 other people or you will die in 7 days. So yeah, I mean, I hate to be down on something like this because maybe this is the beginning of a great partnership. They have all these internal properties now they would theoretically have access to do cool stuff with. Maybe we get a Bubsy collection. I don't know. Maybe they truly hate themselves and work on that. But we have seen in recent years what happens when a small developer gets acquired by a larger developer. And it almost always results in layoffs and some of the loss of that artistic vision. And so I think that's my big concern with it. Digital Eclipse has been one of my favorite studios. I wish them well. I hope this works out. I'm very trepidatious at the moment with it. And so I said there's a reason to be skeptical of this situation, and it comes in the part of Bungie. So Bungie, you will remember, was acquired by PlayStation for several $billion, and they have just announced major layoffs of 100 employees, or close to around 100 employees. This includes their famed composer, Michael Salvatore, who co-composed the Halo soundtracks. So reportedly 8% of staff have been laid off. I believe I read that they're around 1,200 total staff at Bungie. So, around 8% total. And apparently Destiny revenue has fallen 45% below expectations. So that's obviously their big money maker. As part of this, they announced that the Destiny 2 expansion is getting delayed till, I believe, next summer sometime, and that Marathon, so remember they released a trailer earlier this year that they're bringing back the Marathon franchise, that is getting delayed until 2025 now, so that will not be out at all next year. Bungie did put out a statement directly addressing all this to fans in which they said, "We know we've lost your trust."
Okay, cool. You know that. What are you going to do about it, Bungie?
Yeah, I think the thing that's really kind of weird about this is when PlayStation bought them, it was kind of a weird deal because everybody kind of thought, is Destiny really that worthwhile, right? Because you're buying them for one game. They don't own Halo anymore, which was, this major franchise that you have spun off in all sorts of kind of different ways. And then what we've heard internally, and we've talked about this on this podcast, is that they've been taking Bungie and being like, hey, we're developing all of these games as a service. And, supposedly PlayStation has at least 12 of those in development. And they were bringing Bungie in to help guide those or to evaluate those. And that's part of the reason that Last of Us games as a service game has apparently been delayed indefinitely, is that Bungie evaluated it and was like, this game should not be released. I mean, that's at least the internal scuttle on it. So to now hear that they're laying off 100 employees, it kind of makes you wonder, is that whole games as a service initiative within PlayStation imploding as we speak?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know this has been sort of a recurring conversation that we've had just over the past couple of months, but we've talked about the lifespan of these games. Destiny had arguably, it's still going, but maybe the peak of success of any of those types of games. And
outside of a Fortnite.
Yeah, outside of a Fortnite, and the longevity of a Destiny, I think would even, as of now, is older than Fortnite. I don't know about Destiny 2. But anyways, and so to see
It's one game.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
but I mean, to see that their expectation is basically halved. What, the revenue that it brought in was half of whatever their expectation was. I mean, I think that goes to show that these games are not indefinite. Like, they will come to an end at some point. Hype will die down, and
Absolutely.
You're gonna have a devoted player base for sure, but you have to have some sort of transition plan when it falls off, because I don't know what it, sort of the trajectory looks like, but like it feels like it's very possible that with these games, it might fall off a cliff. It's not like a slow, steady decline. You might be at the top and at the bottom very shortly afterwards. So I think, like, if anything, it's a lesson to be learned that if this is the direction that Sony's going to go, you have to have that transition in place to whatever the next one's going to be.
Well, you play a lot of games online with friends, and so, like, it's a snowball effect, right?
Yeah.
Like, if a couple of your friends are like, we're not playing that anymore, that's often a good enough reason for you to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not either. What are we playing?
Mhm.
Like, we're moving over here to, whatever new thing is out. Not Hyenas. Saying cancel that before it even got released. But, like, there's always something new coming out.
Yeah.
And when your friends move over to that, you don't necessarily stay. So, like, one person moving can pull other people, and it creates that snowball effect of, like, more and more people are leaving that game. And so I think you're right. Like, this isn't a slow decline. It feels like it's falling off a sharp cliff. 50%.
Yeah.
Right? This isn't,
Yeah, that's massive.
5 or 10% or 15% below expectations. We're 50% below expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty significant miss.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess I think about, especially, I don't think there's any game like that I personally am, like, super invested in. It's what, like, okay, y'all are playing PUBG. Cool. I'll download PUBG. Oh, you're playing Fall Guys this week? All right, sure. I'll play that.
Yeah.
I'm not like, no, we got to play that. I'm not the one leading that charge.
Right.
So, it's very much like, okay, if that's what you're playing, then cool. I'll download it. I'll play it for if it's the flavor of the week type of thing.
Well, I'm thinking, like, because I've seen this a lot with Fall Guys, where, like, people download it and then delete it, and then, a new season comes out, new costumes and whatever, and then they re-download and play for, like, a week. So, yeah, it's not, like you said, it's a very sharp, it's a fall off a cliff, not a climb down a hill.
It seems like it. I mean, that would be my guess, but maybe it isn't. I don't know if it is a slower trajectory, but as you said, 45% that's not like you barely missed. Like, that's a holy crap, what are we going to do now type of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think it falls off a cliff out of nowhere. I think there probably is a steady decline for a bit, and then it falls off the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say it's probably like, 5, 10, 12, 45.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I think what's interesting about this, obviously, is we've talked about layoffs for, I feel like, the past 2 months on this podcast.
I feel like layoffs have replaced Activision Blizzard as the doom story of the week.
Right. Like, who would have thought there would be a worse doom story than Activision?
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Capcom thing was the one that I had called out, but when I came in and I saw that, I was like, geez, another episode where we're talking about layoffs.
So, I mean, obviously, our hearts and thoughts go out to these people. Obviously, it can be quite devastating to lose a job. So, obviously, we wish the best for them. I think the bigger story here is their Last of Us live service game has been indefinitely postponed for Sony. They're doing significant layoffs at Bungie. It really starts to make you wonder if that whole movement towards live service games is just imploding internally at Sony. And if this has been something, they're talking about having 12 games. That's a significant amount of development.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have 12 different development teams working on that. they're working on that. They're not working on single player games. So one of the things that's kind of interesting is we don't know anything that's coming out next year for the PlayStation 5, really. First party from Sony. The Wolverine game has been announced, but we don't even know if that's coming out next year.
I think the only one, but it's a service game, is I still don't remember whatever the name of it was. What is her name? Jade Raymond?
Yeah. But do we have a set date for that game?
I don't know. I think maybe my assumption was that it would be next year, but maybe there's not a date on that one.
Yeah, so if these games are imploding
Yeah.
and they have been spending a lot of time and resources on these live service games, next year, is there not anything much coming out? Are they going to have Microsoft's year next year where they don't have the big first party titles? Like they don't have the Spider-Man 2, right, to rally people behind it. And, that could be, that sort of, I think, makes you kind of take a step back and go, wow, Nintendo's been doing a really good job.
Yeah.
Like, they've been putting out 3 or 4 big games a year, and not every one of them may appeal to you, but they are putting out a consistent stream of games.
I'd say that Nintendo's got consistency down in a way that nobody else does.
In a way that Nintendo hasn't in the past.
Yeah.
Like, part of what sunk the Wii U was, low software coming out for, and certainly that hurt the Wii, and it's certainly going back to the N64. Like, this has been a consistent Nintendo problem. It hasn't been with the Switch. They've been, knocking it out of the park there. So it is really interesting to see Microsoft and Sony struggling with this.
Yeah.
But again, as we say, obviously we hope the best for the people getting laid off, that they land on their feet and find new employment quickly.
Helldivers and Final Fantasy, I think, are your 2 2024 games as of right now.
Yeah. And Final Fantasy,
is that
the
going to be
third party.
multi-platform? Yeah.
I'll
Okay.
say that because I was like, Final Fantasy? No, that's third party.
And it probably will go multi-platform at some point.
Yeah.
Because they have announced that they're going to start bringing their games to Xbox.
My guess is that they're going to do 6 months at least
Yeah.
of just on the PS5.
They might already have that deal in place before this Xbox deal came along.
Sorry, I'm just looking at them right now. The Suicide Squad game is at the top of the list of upcoming stuff. I also don't know if that's
That's not
PlayStation
exclusive.
5. Yeah,
that's
so I have no idea.
multi-platform.
So
That's also a thing, isn't it?
That's another game that looked like it was trying to do something live service, and that game got delayed a year.
Yeah.
That game was supposed to come out this summer.
yeah, that was supposed to be out this year.
And
And
because that game had a disastrous debut where everybody was like, what is this?
yeah, I remember.
All right, let's move on. Deltarune is to get a full release after Chapter 4 instead of waiting until Chapter 5 is done.
So Toby Fox has been saying this whole time that chapters 3, 4, and 5 were going to come out together. There's supposed to be 7 chapters in total. But the reason he said that originally was because he was like, Chapter 3 is really just kind of a fluff piece. Like, Chapter 3 is fun. Chapter 3 is not story important, which we don't believe you, Toby. Everything is story important.
It's the beach episode.
Yeah, it's the beach episode. It's like, especially after the ending of Chapter 2, don't tell me Chapter 3 won't be story important. But I'm excited for this. I did not get into Undertale and Deltarune until after Chapter 2 of Deltarune was already out. And so I haven't had to deal with the 3-year wait between Chapters 1 and 2 of Deltarune. But now I'm like, hey, Toby Fox, radiation, annoying dog, when is this coming?
Yeah, I think this probably kind of goes back to a problem that a lot of episodic games have had over the years. A lot of those, like The Walking Dead and stuff, which is that the idea behind episodic games is that it would be a consistent income, right? So instead of releasing one game every 3 or 4 years, you're going to release that game in episodes. So every 6 months, you know, you're getting a set amount of income from people buying that new episode. And I think what a lot of people kind of figure out with that stuff is, oh, like it takes a lot longer to develop these episodes than we anticipated.
That was the approach to like the first Life is Strange's as well, right?
Yeah.
And then I think they realized, no, let's not do that. I like the newest one. True Colors was pretty good. But yeah, that's a full game.
Well, the first Life is Strange is a really good game, but it, you know, the original release, you know, sort of setup didn't quite work.
I feel like that early to mid 2010s was big on like episodic releases. You know, you had that with Life is Strange, you had it with Bendy and the Ink Machine, you had it with all kinds of stuff.
And I think the problem is if you are designing around that and then one of the episodes slips, right, then you're not getting that income, and you've sort of sacrificed the big lump sum of the income by doing this episodic release. And so I think what a lot of these developers end up figuring out is, okay, we got to put something out because we got to bring in some money.
Well, wasn't Chapter 2 free of Deltarune?
I think Chapter 1 was.
It might have been Chapter 1. I feel like one of the chapters was free.
Yeah, I feel like the Chapter 1 when it released was free.
And I wonder if you run into like the same problem as the games as a service, where it's just eventually it's just like, I'm not, you know, that interest sort of just like starts to pale.
If you're not putting them out consistently, right?
Or if, you know, you say if one of them slips, if one of them just like isn't as good or it doesn't live up to the expectation, like, am I really going to spend money on the next one if this last one wasn't, you know, all that good? Like,
Right.
Well, I will say this.
I mean, I know people love Undertale and Deltarune, but
Right.
Well, but definitely like the hype around this is not what, you know, 2015 Undertale hype was. But I do think, because I'm also thinking of like, I've seen games where they start doing episodic release and then it just never finishes.
Right.
That's definitely not going to happen here. Because I didn't realize this. I was watching a video essay the other day. Toby Fox, literally, this is hilarious to me, honestly. He had a dream about the ending of a video game and was like, I need to make this game that has this ending. And so he made Undertale, but Undertale was not that dream. The ending that he dreamed is the ending to Deltarune. He made Undertale to prove to himself that he could make a game good enough to get to that ending that he... So...
Yeah, I mean, but just the release problems. I know Kentucky Route Zero ran into a similar thing.
Yeah,
so,
or like...
I mean, this is not a condemnation of this game in any way.
Oh, no.
I think
no, that was just a...
I think it's an example of this is really difficult to do. The episodic release format is very difficult to pull off.
Yeah, because it was, 3 years between chapters 1 and 2, and now we're coming up on 4 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is getting to... this is getting to Half-Life 2 levels of like releasing the episodes.
Yeah, and it's like the hype has still been up, you know. Doing the Spampton sweepstakes earlier this year kept the hype up, you know. The theory crafting is still out there. But again, like you said, you know, it's not 2015, 2016 Undertale popularity. You know, we have to have video essays now explaining who Dr. Gaster is.
Well, and I think that's part of the problem, right? When the release schedule is stretched out so long, you lose a little bit of that hype in the process, right?
And Toby should know that because he composed for Homestuck. And Homestuck was constantly killed by big hiatuses.
Yeah. So, it's interesting just to see those plans sort of rerun. And this is not something that significantly like changes or hurts the game in any way.
Oh, no. And it's exciting news because, you know, I'm looking forward to chapters 3 and 4. And obviously I'm looking forward to chapter 5 too. But it's good to know, like...
Yeah, in 2037 when chapter 5 comes out, it's going to be awesome.
I think you're being optimistic there.
Yeah. It's good to know that he's willing to give us what he has. You know, he said 3 is done, 4 is on like the final polishing, so they'll probably come out next year. And then yeah, who knows when 5 will come out, but at least, I'd rather have a 4-year wait for 2 chapters than a 7-year wait for 3 chapters.
Right. Let's see. There was a robust Gran Turismo 7 update. The 1.4 update introduces new cars, tracks, features, 4-player split screen for PlayStation 5, and more. I just thought this was kind of interesting because we see this more and more with, I know this is a multiplayer game as well. Obviously, one of the features is split screen multiplayer, but like these games getting rolled out, and then even more what we think of as traditionally single player games. And these sort of like added features just coming out for a long time. So we talked about the DLC for Sonic Frontiers. They called that DLC. We could almost just call that a patch update. It's DLC, it's new content and everything for it. But in the same way that this is new content, right? Mm-hmm. Like this is new tracks. This is new cars. This is what we used to pay for. And we're seeing this more and more of games being supported over not just the initial 3 to 6 months after it comes out, but 1 to 2 years or longer after it comes out. And that's a pretty cool shift in the industry. Mm-hmm. And, if you're spending $70 for a new game, this makes it feel like you're getting more of the value out of that $70. Mm-hmm. I know they've talked about some of the new things coming out for the Spider-Man 2, and they're going to release new costumes and, new Game Plus modes and all that sort of stuff. And that's cool. The director of Lies of P has confirmed a sequel.
In the least surprising news of the year.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's awesome.
I think we've talked about lots of people are hyping that game and saying it's, on their game of the year list. So that's cool.
I never did return to it. The Souls-likes are really just not. I don't have much experience with them, so it wasn't for me. I would go back to what I did play if it was fun, but I mean I think that's really exciting news to have a indie developer have this kind of success with their game.
And you said that's on Game Pass?
Yes,
that's where you played it. So yeah,
I read the wiki page. It sounds like the ending definitely set up the sequel. So and just from reading the wiki page and like seeing how it goes, I'm excited to see what comes next.
Let's see. Sonic Dream Team is coming to Apple Arcade. So this announcement felt like it came out of nowhere. They were like, "Hey, we're making a new 3D Sonic game, and here it is, and it's coming out, I believe, the beginning of December."
Something like that.
So they put out a trailer for this. So this is coming out to Apple Arcade exclusively for now, at least. This looks like very much a sort of return to the sort of behind the back 3D Sonic games, but it has and Alicia, you know this better than me, this has a much more sort of like colorful, cartoony approach to that.
Yeah.
This looks much more like the 16-bit sort of style, I guess I would say. Yeah,
it looks like a lot of fun. It looks cute. I'm certainly not getting Apple Arcade to be able to play it, but I think that this will be fun. I think it's a nice little like side release. They had Frontiers, they had Superstars to be like their big releases, and now this is like, hey, have fun.
I thought this was like a kart racer. I mean, I never looked into it, so I had no reason to think that. That was just my assumption that this was like another one of those.
Well, they made
Sonic Unleashed,
they made a couple of those.
Transformed racer, whatever that
Sonic
game is called.
Sonic Riders.
Transform.
Well, Transform. I was thinking it was going to be like a kart racer.
Yeah.
Than Sonic running, but yeah.
I think that for me, this game looks more interesting than Superstars. Like the trailer for this, I was like, oh, I kind of like the way that this game looks and everything. And Superstars never really hooked me. And then, of course, obviously it came out and reviews were very kind of and so this looks more interesting to me. I don't know that it actually is. I don't know that it's actually going to be good in any way. But, we say this is exclusively for Sonic or Apple Arcade. Those are usually time-limited deals. A lot of their exclusive games eventually come to other platforms. Yeah. I would not be surprised at all if next year this is not coming out onto Switch too, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
PlayStation and Xbox. So it was just kind of interesting to see them, kind of almost a stealth announce a new Sonic game, especially so soon after Superstars came out.
Yeah.
They also announced that Disney Dreamlight Valley is also coming to Apple Arcade. So you remember, I think just last week we talked about that game is not going free to play anymore. So that will be a full purchase. But if you have Apple Arcade, you can play that game. So that seems like a smart way to handle that. And, like one of the things I think is also kind of interesting about this is Apple Arcade is still going. Like that seemed like something that should have died off a long time ago.
I'm not going to lie. I read Apple Arcade and was like, what? Huh?
I mean, when they announced that, there's a lot of fanfare, but Apple does that sometimes, and then it doesn't catch on. They're like, we're going to quietly smother this and not talk about it anymore. But they have continued to put out, these sort of big releases and everything. And here you're getting a new Sonic game and a new Disney game, for its official release. If you have kids and you don't want them playing games that are constantly showing them advertisements, this seems like a pretty good value because they're going to get to play a Sonic game. They're going to get to play a Disney game.
Yeah.
Is Apple Arcade a subscription service?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It's like $5 a month, $6 a month or something.
Okay.
And they have a catalog of games. So it's like Game Pass for your phone. But like my understanding, so I did do a trial subscription at one point that was free. But my understanding is none of the games have in-app purchases or advertising in them.
That's nice.
So you are paying that in a lot of cases to get kind of the standard style of game you would get on a phone, but more maybe kid-friendly. You don't have to worry about your kid, buying $10,000 worth of gems.
Sure. Then maybe what you just said answers this next question. Have they said if any of those like big new games, well, not new games, but like the Resident Evil 4 or Death Stranding, will those types of games be on Apple Arcade or no?
I don't think they've said, and so I don't think at launch any of those are.
Have games
Remember,
like
they've
that
also
been
said-
included in Apple Arcade?
You mean like console ports of games?
Yeah, or just like those type of like big adventure types of games.
Well, so the who is it? The creator of Final Fantasy made a game. What's the name of that game that came out a couple years ago on Apple Arcade, and it was all like little dioramas, the areas that you went into and everything. Like the game looked amazing at the time, and so that's like maybe the biggest thing that I've seen where there was really a lot of people talking like, I kind of want to play that game. I don't want to subscribe to Apple Arcade just to play that game.
Remember, Apple said that the next iPhone will be the biggest gaming thing ever.
Well, it's this one's the 15 that just came out.
And the reason why I, qualified that like as soon as I said it is if this is meant to also be something for like kids to use, if there may be some hesitancy of putting like a Resident Evil 4 on, something like that. But I don't know if that's their goal. I would understand them not putting something like that on there.
Yeah.
I think you can put restrictions.
Oh, okay. That
on
makes
phones.
sense then, yeah.
I think parents can set restrictions.
Yeah, kids know how to get around those.
Well, I mean, the kids can get around that on an Xbox as well.
Yeah.
So they do what they can or want.
Yeah.
Let's see. Xbox to start allowing app developers to use the Edge rendering engine for better, more updated web tech. So this is probably going to have the most impact on things on your Xbox, like the Netflix app. Also, the potential of third-party streaming game apps. So if somebody like, say, NVIDIA was wanting to port their streaming service over to the Xbox platform, this would probably make that significantly easier to have this updated web tech at their availability. I don't know what Xbox's currently their policy is on that. I know there are some third-party streaming platforms. So like there's a classic video game one. that's currently available on there. So I know they do allow some of those. I don't know what their restrictions on that are. So this is potentially going to make that a better experience. So minor note, but kind of cool to see them doing that. Let's see. Xbox has also started greeting fans with Modern Warfare 3 ads when they turn on their system this is after obviously their Activision acquisition. So when you turn on your Xbox, you might get a pop-up that says, "Hey, pre-order Modern Warfare 3." And you know that Microsoft now owns Call of Duty.
Just in case you forgot.
And this last one just came out today. I thought this was kind of interesting. There is apparently an unreleased PlayStation 2 Daredevil game called Daredevil: The Man Without Fear, which has leaked online. It was apparently nearly complete when Marvel squashed it. So apparently Marvel was unhappy with the game, and I don't know if that's with the actual gameplay or maybe the depiction of Daredevil, what the issue was. But apparently they squashed this game before it came out. This is back in the PlayStation 2 era. So
I was going to say this was...
Had to be close to when the movie came out, right?
That's what I'm thinking, is if it was...
movie.
The Ben Affleck film.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it came out around then, if that was why they squashed it, because that movie was so bad. And the Electra movie was so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, they just didn't want it to compete if it was a different thing, if it wasn't, connected to the movie.
Yeah.
Right. If they had started development of this before the movie and it was going to come out around the same time, and they would have preferred a more traditional movie tie-in game.
Well, and because PS2 era, this was also a much more divided Marvel. You had the X-Men movies, you had the Fantastic Four movie, and like nowadays we're so used to everything's connected.
Different companies.
Right.
This is pre-cinematic Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is Fox doing the Daredevil film.
Yeah. And so this is interesting. I might have to look up what leaked online and like check this out.
Yeah, I always like seeing these like uncompleted games leak out. I think that's exciting and fun. I understand why developers maybe don't want that to happen, but from a sort of preservation perspective and just also a curiosity perspective, I think it's really cool because obviously people did tons of work. It's neat for people to get to at least see and experience that. So yeah, that's all exciting. That does it for news for this week. So let's move on to our big question. We have moved into November. So Thanksgiving's coming up. It's time to start thinking about what you are thankful for. And so I thought it would be fun for us to each say a franchise of games that we are thankful for. So this doesn't have to be your favorite game franchise. In fact, that's probably not the right answer. Your favorite game franchise is a franchise that maybe you're like, I'm just really thankful somebody makes this because maybe it's bizarre, maybe it's weird, maybe it doesn't sell well, but like they have continued to stick with this and make these fun games. Mario, how about you? What game franchise are you thankful for?
So apparently I'm answering this wrong because it might also be my favorite game franchise.
That's fine. That's fine.
It's the Yakuza franchise. I love that there's a franchise out there that is able to, write and craft these like meaningful and heartfelt narratives while also not taking itself super seriously. Where you can have this really like heartfelt moment between two characters and 15 minutes later you're fighting dudes in like a diaper fetish club. So
as one does.
Yeah. And I think about this, especially like, where games are at. I think that a lot of like the really big games that come out can be like a little self-important or like a little self-aggrandizing and take themselves a little too seriously. And I like that the Yakuza series embraces the goofiness of video gameplay, but also is able to deliver these really like meaningful stories as well.
All right, Alicia, how about you?
I'm gonna go back to my childhood on this one. I'm gonna say Kingdom Hearts. I think I'm just so, not only am I grateful for, just the beauty of an official crossover of all of these worlds that I loved beforehand and have come to love, having all the Disney worlds, having so much Final Fantasy in there, giving us character. Sora is such a special character. Sora and Roxas both are such special characters to me, just particularly so much with dealing with mental health, being in dark places, and Sora never giving up on the light and always just being a beacon of hope is so special to me. And I have so many fantastic memories of sitting and playing those games with my sister. When we had 30-minute timers, she would play Kingdom Hearts 1 for 30 minutes, and then we'd switch over, and I'd play Kingdom Hearts 2 for 30 minutes and switch back to her playing 1, and just being able to sit there playing them together. For all the chaos, for all the 15 years of waiting for Kingdom Hearts 3 and getting 50 million remakes and adaptations around it, I'm still just so thankful for Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, I don't want to tease too much, but 2037, you're going to have Deltarune 5 and Kingdom Hearts 4. Oh, baby.
Yeah. I recognize what a mess it is, and I love it, and I love it for that.
No,
because crossover, by nature of being a crossover, it's guaranteed to be a mess.
That's a good pick.
Well, and I think the thing that's really weird about the Kingdom Hearts series is, one, Disney doesn't really do that outside of that game series. Like, they did that kid series, House of Mouse, that kind of crossed over their characters. But and they did this new film, Once Upon a Studio, that hasn't. But it's not something you feel like it. It's
something fans do,
right? And for them to sign off on a video game company to do this, right? At the time, felt like an entirely insane idea, and for that company to be Square, right? Like, they're not doing this with Capcom. They're doing it with Square, and Square's like, yeah, we're also going to cross over the Final Fantasy characters so that, you have Cloud talking to Goofy, and you're like, what a bizarre thing to do. Like, what a bizarre game to be made.
It definitely feels like, and I know other people have talked about this as well, that it feels like it was supposed to be two different franchises. That you were supposed to have the RPG Final Fantasy side, and then you were supposed to have the goofy Disney side, and they were just like, you know what? Why not?
I think that's one of the things I love about it so much is it's something that I'm very used to seeing generated as fan content. There's a million crossover fanfics out there or fan art that brings together different characters. It feels like it came from a place of genuine love for all of these things and wanting to bring them together, rather than, like you said, a lot of big games now tend to have an element of self-importance. And this feels like it was just born from a love of I just want to play with all my favorite characters, and I don't care that it doesn't make sense for them to be together. I'm gonna put them together.
Yeah, I mean, it very much does feel like when you're a little kid and you have your G.I. Joe and your Ninja Turtles and your He-Man, and you're like, I have all these toys. They're all going to play together. Yeah. I'll create a logical reason in my head, but it's the logical reason of a 6-year-old.
Obviously, they're all friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Why are they friends? Because He-Man and the Ninja Turtles ended up in a dimensional portal.
and here's my sister's Barbie doll. She's in on this too, right? And so we'll just throw all of these into a pot. And so I think you're right when you say it feels like these are were meant to be two separate franchises, a crossover of Final Fantasy games, a crossover of Disney games. And in the factory, somebody hit the wrong button and they fell into the same vat together, and it's, oops, all Donalds.
Yeah, you gotta...
No, not all Donalds. He'll never be healed.
You get Goofy having a conversation with Sephiroth, and you're just like,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good answer, because it is one of those franchises you go, wow, this is really bizarre that we got this.
Yeah.
We should not be getting this bizarre franchise.
And yet we did, and it's a it's a mess sometimes, but it's always a beautiful one.
Sometimes. That's a storyline that you need several PhDs to parse apart.
It became a mess over the years. Kingdom Hearts 1 was not a mess.
Over the years, really. That is also a franchise that just like melts your brain. Like,
yeah.
Anytime somebody starts talking about it, you're like, I don't need to know.
I love it for that.
Yeah. So I have said before on here many times that I love the Dreamcast. I think the Dreamcast is the height of like you have a large first party company just throwing everything at the wall, and it's fantastic for that. So I am thankful for the Dreamcast, and I'm thankful for a lot of the franchises that were sort of like born out of that era. So things like Crazy Taxi and Seaman, and even like the stuff that came kind of like after that still felt like they were carryovers of that era of Sega. So the one I was thinking of in particular was Super Monkey Ball.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Which is like just the most bizarre franchise if you stop and think about it. Like, okay, we're going to put monkeys in giant plastic balls, and you're going to move the world around to try to get them down through mazes and collect bananas, which in the original one with a giant Dole sticker slapped on them because of the product placement. And then we're going to have a bunch of weird mini games where you like compete with other people in their monkey in a lucite ball. And it's such a weird franchise. And it was like, those games still hold up, but they were so good at the time. Mm-hmm. Like that, that game when you think back to the GameCube's launch, it was Luigi's Mansion, it was the Rogue Leader Star Wars game, and it was Super Monkey Ball. And like Luigi's Mansion may be the least of those three games, really, in a lot of ways. And that's really bizarre. And so I'm thankful, and I wish more companies, big companies, your Nintendos, your Segas, your Capcoms and stuff, would do weird stuff like that still.
A few weeks ago, when our big question was if you could create a something 99 game, the way that like F-Zero, did you say Super Monkey Ball 99, or am I making that up in my head? Because now I'm thinking Super Monkey Ball 99 would be sick.
That would be.
I think you're making it up.
Chaotic as hell.
You're absolutely right. That would be fantastic.
Well, look, Capcom might be doing something big and weird. They have an unannounced game that'll sell millions by March.
Unfortunately, Capcom doesn't have Super Monkey Ball, but I guess they could license and work out a deal with Sega.
They'll do Ultra Gorilla Orb.
They're going to license DC. There'll be a Gorilla Grodd game. It's just him in a very erudite like accent, constantly complaining. I shouldn't be rode around like this.
That's it. That's the $1 million idea.
Oh man, I kind of want to play that game. Just a running commentary. More companies. I think all three of those, right? Like the thing that's kind of fun about all three of those is that they are kind of weird franchises, and they are, certainly the Yakuza franchise keeps getting weirder.
Yeah.
And, I guess to some degree, so does the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Like that first game is it was pretty weird.
You can follow it though.
Yeah. And then they've just kind of, it feels like a franchise. Like you've got one of the biggest franchises in the world, Final Fantasy. You've got the biggest like brand IP in the world, Disney. And then they just gave a madman the like rights to write it. And it was just like writing the most insane, weird, like, I think you're right, fan fiction. And you're like, oh, I thought you would write something like so that children could enjoy this. You're like writing this for like hardcore, like, people who are going to be spending, hours and hours on message boards, like debating the intricacy of this plot. And so it's just kind of like fun to see companies do weird stuff still.
Same. I think we've all got delightful answers to this, and that makes me happy.
Yeah, so if you have not played those games, use this November to try out one of those franchises that you haven't. They're all like fun franchises, at the very least to try out, even if you don't stick with them, even if you get completely overwhelmed with the darkness and everything.
Darkness.
All right. Thank you, Alicia and Mario, for joining me. Thank you for everyone listening. We appreciate you. You can check out salukigames.com to find out more of our old episodes and other stuff that we have done, including that Jackbox video is posted up there. So if you're interested, I don't know which one that is.
It's the Rift Tracks video.
Oh, it's Rift Tracks. Sorry. It is Rift Tracks, not Jackbox. Well, there may be a Jackbox
I'll say,
one.
if there's archive from playing with pets, there's Jackbox somewhere in there. But
that is on there, the archive from Playing for Pets, so you can watch that as well. But thank you as always for listening and tuning in. Obviously, we very much appreciate it. We hope that you are having a very nice November to be thankful for. And we will talk to you again next week.